everybody, how's it going? Happy Small Business Week from tenttable.com. Even as we've grown over the years, we started out as a small business, and I'm going to give some business tips upon what worked for us, what didn't work for us. For people that don't know, before tenttable.com, we were ABC Hardware and Rental. 40 plus years in the rental industry. Started out small with tents and tables and chairs. We rented everything, as well as bobcats and excavators and man lifts and plumbing tools. But I was pretty much in charge of generally the party rental business as a whole. I was looking back and I'm remembering back that, when we started, it was like anybody else. We started out with a few tents, a few tables, some chairs. Inflatables back then were not even an option. They weren't something that we, even had the opportunity to promote. So we were basically starting off with our 20 wide tents and tables and chairs, and every year it grew. We started with pole tents, and then we went to frame tents, and it hit that point where it was like, oh my God, somebody just called and they wanted a 40-foot by 40-foot tent. I don't have a tent that big. What am I going to do? How am I going to set that up? I've never even set up anything that big. Well, it took me a day to figure out. It's just another half a dozen stakes and a half a dozen poles and a couple more people. Okay, the footprint was the same. When we started getting into inflatables, it was the same thing. You're starting with some bounce houses, and next thing you know, you're looking at buying a 24-foot double base slide, and you're like, what am I getting into? How am I going to set this up? How's it going to work? It's no different. It's more stakes and it's a little bit more label, but the principles are all the same. There's a lot of people now that I speak to on a daily basis that are kind of just getting into the business, and they're asking for tips and what works and what doesn't work. And and I think back to the early days of ABC Rental, and even now, as with Tent and Table, the number one thing that you always have to be is curious, and you have to seek out discovery. When you're on the phone with a customer, ask as many questions as you can. What type of an event are you having? How many people are you expecting? Okay, what day is the event on? When can we deliver the event? There's 100 questions. Is somebody going to be home at the point of delivery? Okay, no. Well, could you do me a favor? Can you put some chairs or something as a marker in the backyard, okay, as to where it's going to go? Do you have a dog? If you have a dog, please make sure the dog is in the house, and more important, that the dog doo-doo is not, like landmines in the backyard. Do you have a sprinkler system? Are there any overhead wires? Okay. Have you measured? Okay. It's nice now because, now I can go to Google Maps and I can bring up an address and I can kind of look at it. But, back in the early days, I used to have to go out and do site surveys. I'd go out there with a measuring tape, all things that are not financially affordable anymore. I don't have, so many things have changed. The cost of doing business has changed. Fuel is expensive. You want to be able to get as much information from that first phone call as possible, okay? Who's going to be signing the contract? What is going to happen if it rains? Write down questions and just be curious, okay? Because the more information you have, the more time you spend on the customer on the initial call, you're building a relationship. Hopefully one thing that's nice about the rental industry is the relationships can last for years and years and years. You might start out with a first birthday party, okay? And you're gonna take that customer, if you treat them with kindness, respect, good value, and you do a good job, you're probably gonna see those kids graduating from high school, okay? You might even be doing a wedding. And, over the 40 years, I have customers that I was involved with literally from birthday one, okay, to setting up a 40 by 100 tent in their backyard or their property for a wedding, okay? So it starts really with that first phone call, that first inquiry that somebody might have about your services. Be straightforward, be professional, okay? If you don't know something, don't lie about it. Say, that's a great question, let me get back to you on it, okay? Work within your means. One thing that's hard for any entrepreneur is saying no, okay? I got just one more bounce house in my shop. I still have 10 tables left for the weekends, 2 tents. I can do one more delivery, that's not a problem. Can you do one more delivery? Okay. We started as a tent business and we went into inflatables, okay? There's a lot of people out there that are in the inflatable business that don't want to get in the tent business. They don't want to do tables and chairs. I see it on Facebook posts all the time. It's too much work, it doesn't fit, I've tried it, I didn't like it. Well, if you have that attitude going into it, it's not gonna work, okay? But at the same time, I found, and this is somebody that started with tents, tables, and chairs, then went into inflatables, okay? Everything was a natural progression. My 20 by 20 tent with tables and chairs and maybe some string lights and a couple sidewalls might have been, I'm going back 30 years, maybe that was a $250 or $300 rental, okay? When I started adding inflatables and maybe a couple carnival games and a cotton candy and a snow cone machine and some of the accessories for that, I was doubling my average ticket. And I can't stress the importance of maximizing your average ticket with how fuel costs are continually rising, labor costs more, okay? I would run on one 15-foot truck, I would have 2 guys in it, and generally I would expect those guys to get 8 to 10 jobs done a day, okay? That truck would leave packed. The drivers would all be, appearance was important. I wanted everybody to look the same. They had to have on their same t-shirts. If they were baseball caps, they would have a tent and table cap on. If I gave somebody a brand new t-shirt and at the end of the day, he came back and his t-shirt was now a wife beater's tank top with the sleeves ripped off and the shirt cut because it was too warm to work, okay? That was unacceptable. I wanted the appearance to be the same. When that truck from ABC Rental pulled up, it was logoed, the guys got out, they looked professional. Regardless of the size of the event, it was easy to identify who the ABC crew members were, okay? And they would get their job done and then go on to the next. But if I'm out at an XYZ address, okay, I want to get as much on that property as possible. So that's why, as much as people may not like the tables and chairs and some of the other aspects, if you're only a tent rental company, or an inflatable company, you really have the ability to double your average ticket.